This nation is founded on Judeo-Christian values.
Mm-hmm.
And those are beautiful values when taken at the highest level. But when it talks about loving your fellow man like yourself, extending compassion, it's easy to love people who look like you and think like you.
Sure.
But to extend compassion to people whose values you don't understand, whose values you may find abhorrent, who you find threatening, that's the big game. That's the game of Jesus Christ. That's the game of the Buddha. That's the game of Martin Luther King. So I'm going to really, anybody listening to this and who's having some consternation, I want them to take a look at that. Because that is the big game and that's the next step. The last thing I'll say is I do believe in the law. It was called the law of return. It's also called the law of karma. What is the first law of relativity? Every action has an opposite equal reaction. That's what karma is. And so I happen to believe that every thought you think, every word you speak, and every action that you do has a consequence. And we have the decision to make every moment, literally, how we want to show up as human beings. And I don't doubt for a moment that I have a shadow because I'm working on taking a look at it and why it exists. I just don't choose to dwell there. And when I interact with people, I don't choose to show that to them. In fact, the only person that sees it is my wife. Lucky her.
Sure.
But I don't want to live in my shadow. I don't want to be defined by my shadow. I want to be defined by my highest qualities and not my lowest. So,
And you know, you talk about different religions, and I think one common thread in all religions, and some of you may have heard this before, is that we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And if we really honor that, then racism just goes away. You know, all of this stuff just goes away because it becomes insignificant. What kind of physical, encasing we have, because we're all spiritual beings.
amen.
And, if people were really true to their beliefs, then they'd see that.
Absolutely. I'll take one more step with that. I happen to believe there's a part of us as humans that lives past death of the body. You can call it spirit, grace, soul, whatever you want to call that.
Yeah.
But that is who we truly are. That's the part of us which is connected to all other things. And I'm pretty sure, and again I say this humbly because I'm one person, that if you call it a soul, there are no black souls and white souls. There's no gay souls and straight souls or white or Palestinian souls and Israeli souls. It's just soul. And we are all actually the same thing. We're all connected to the same creation. We're all one. And again, why put our attention on the shell? But it's the nature of human to be tribal, and we're just going to continue to put out a positive message so people, one at a time, can choose to be inspired by it or not.
And an understanding of that principle can change reality. And this is something that I'd like, even my brothers and sisters to understand because, of course, I was born black, raised black, and still am black. But I've been, for instance, stopped by police officers for speeding and, any number of times because, unfortunately, I like to drive fast. So, but when I get stopped for speeding, I would say, and it's happened since I think the first time I was like 16 when I first got my driver's license and I was driving, Mustang that my father gave to me when I was in undergrad. And I remember I was going down the street, near the campus, and it had been raining. And so I was having fun spinning the tires, and I'm just going down the street, spinning the tires, going around the curve, spinning the tires. And I happened to look up, and I noticed a police officer had been just quietly following me the whole time. And when he saw that I saw him, he flicked his lights on and pulled me over. So I'm thinking, oh man, I'm just gonna really get it now. So he comes to the car, and it's a white police officer, and and I get out, and I'm just respectful to him, and he asked me to sit in the car beside him, in the passenger seat beside him, and basically this is a white police officer. He gives me a fatherly talk about, just, he didn't even kind of lay into me about what I was doing because he just see I was just clowning around. But he just came and kind of gave me a fatherly talk and just let me off, basically. Didn't give me a ticket, didn't even give me a hard time. And I think the reason he did that is even in those days, I saw us all as spiritual beings. And I saw him as a spiritual being. I didn't see him as a white police officer. I just saw him as a police officer that's probably got a challenging job, and he stopped me because I was just screwing around. And I would say as many times as I've been stopped, and I've been stopped quite a few times for speeding, I would say 75% of the time, and it's always been white police officers, they just let me off. Now, why does that happen? I think it's my perception, how I see them. I don't necessarily identify them, oh, all of a sudden I'm being stopped by a white cop. And I don't even necessarily thinking about, oh, I'm just, a black guy. It's a whole different way of perceiving reality. And it changes. It changes the reality of racism in my orbit. And I've been blessed to have that experience in this life. And I'd love to see other people of color understand that principle so that, it changes this dynamic.
It's beautiful. It's powerful, too. There's a book I read a while back called Power versus Force. And in the book, it talks about exactly what you're talking about, your preconceptions, how you place your attention, what energy you are resonating as you walk through your life. And they had this experiment. Took a white guy and walked him through a black neighborhood. I believe it was in Los Angeles, South Central. And he had this feeling of going, I'm not safe here. These people are violent. I'm going to get hurt or mugged. And of course, he had a team that was following him. And sure enough, people come out and say, what are you doing here, white boy? And they'd throw stuff at him and swear at him and threaten him. And they filmed this. And then they took the same guy, reoriented him, went to another neighborhood. He said, these are my people. I love them. These are my family. Just in a different color skin. He walked the neighborhood. People would literally come out and offer him food, welcome him in the house. It was amazing. We are radio broadcast transmitters, and it's what we decide to broadcast that will have an enormous impact on how we're perceived and how we perceive life. Absolutely true. All right. So first of all, Charles, thank you for your candor. I know these haven't always been easy issues to discuss. I guess I want to kind of wrap up a little bit, and I want to say a couple things to the white community and then to the black community. And for the white community, we look at history, and there's been a march towards equality, a march towards liberation in almost every. From India to any country you can imagine. We had a Revolutionary War, and our rights have grown for every kind of person in this country. And so for people who are still holding on to old prejudices and old ways of doing things, they're going to be out of step with history. And I really want to invite those viewers who are part of the white community, who may still have some withholds emotionally, to take a hard look at them. Because as we grow as a society, and more and more blacks become educated and part of the workforce, and managers and company owners and people who are hiring, and it's going to really behoove them to get in line and to accept what is inevitable. I mean, you could have fought the invention of the steam engine, or the internal combustion engine, but it wouldn't have helped. It was going to replace the steam engine. So at some point, people have to say, where is history heading and where am I on that bus, And so what I'm asking of my white brothers and sisters is to take a look at white privilege and see if it's real. Start having at least a conversation inwardly or with your friends about what that means and how it affects others. And then, of course, try to have some compassion. Just compassion, human compassion for a people who have been systematically repressed for about 300 years in this country. Now, it's better than it ever has been. We had a black president. More freedom, more opportunity, more wealth in every way. And that's a good start.
It's interesting that you said you bring up an important point. Our president, in reality, was only half black. If you want to actually sort of really be, sort of specific about it, he had a white mother and a black father, obviously. And I think what's going to happen eventually in our society is that there's going to be so much intermixing of races that we're going to all kind of be mixed. As you said about one of our dear friends, he's an amalgamated nigger. So we're going to all be amalgamated niggas eventually, So at some point in the future, all of this is going to go away because everybody's going to have, friends and relatives who are just, it's all going to be mixed. So, but, do we wait until that day comes to do something about this sort of polarization? Hopefully not.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to say is, as far as to the white community, is systematic and institutionalized discrimination still exists. Now, it doesn't just exist for blacks. Gays still have to deal with it. Women by far have to deal with it. Sure. To take those down, to start deconstructing those, is going to be a benefit to all. Open up markets, open up opportunities, greater commerce, greater abundance, greater prosperity. So I want them to at least be aware of it, at least have their eyes open when they see it. And if you do see it and you feel comfortable, you can call it out and say, why was that man denied service? Or why was it? And people will start thinking twice before they implement these policies that keep black Americans down. If I had to offer some things I'd like them to think about, and you can tell me, I'd like them to, black families, black mothers and fathers, focus on education. It can never hurt you. And if even that's just high school. But if you can get to college, it's going to, listen, my friend that I mentioned to you that I worked with at my last job, my last consulting gig, his mother struggled financially. In one generation, he's now going to be a six-figure earner. He owns his own home. He has a beautiful car. He's got 2 girls he's going to raise and put through school. She changed her family's future in one generation by insisting he goes to a private school and get educated. And I'm not saying it always happens, but I've never heard someone who's hurt by an education. I'm not saying it would help all the time, but it certainly doesn't hurt. Mm-hmm. The second thing is, if you want to operate more effectively in the society at large, it's not just whites, it's Asians, it's Hispanics, it's people who are successful in running businesses, then focus on communicating in a way that people say, hey, you're well-spoken, you're educated, I can trust you to learn this and represent my company and me in a way that would bring us proud. So those are the only 2 things I have. I mean, I don't want to wag my finger at the black community, but I want to just, as a coach, as a corporate coach, I want to say those would be 2 things that would make a huge difference in the lives of most black families. Anyway, Charles, I want to thank you. And is there anything you want to say in closing, or are you at peace?
No, bro. We've, I think, pretty much covered the waterfront. Hopefully we'll do more of this, and sort of drill down deeper as needed on these kind of issues. So, no, thanks for initiating this kind of exchange between us. I mean, we've been doing it for years.
Might as well do it on film.
We might as well do it on film. So,
Right, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, bro.